Here we are live in Moscow with our on-the-spot reporter, Tessa. Hi, sports fans. Here we are in Moscow interviewing Michael Jordan and Scotty Pippen. Michael, tell me, how do you jump so high? Okay, must be the shoe. Scotty, where did you just flying down? How interesting. Michael, you enjoy playing in the NBA? Okay. What do you want to take? What do you want to do in your time? Well, I guess this wraps it up. Remember, this is Ice Carroll, your on-the-spot reporter in Moscow. Sorry these sports players cannot talk. This is life without the freedom of the press. Freedom of the press allows us to know all the information that is going on in the world. It also allows us to print facts without the government getting on our back. We can express our opinions and advertise. The freedom of the press is the First Amendment. The First Amendment also says we have the freedom of speech, religion, and assembly. The freedom of the press has been around since the 1400s, when printing first started. We have the freedom to check the power of the government and express ideas. We also have this freedom so people can decide and vote about business and political ideas. With freedom of the press, we are having knowledge of information other countries don't have knowledge of. Other countries have a limited press for three major reasons: endangering certain individuals, national security, and social morality. The freedom of the press is one of America's views and possibly abused too. Freedom of speech wouldn't mean much if people couldn't express if people couldn't gather together to speak. That's why our founding fathers put freedom of assembly into the Bill of Rights. The court has ruled, though, that a town can require demonstrators to be licensed for a parade or demonstration on government property. The licensing process must not be used to silence people, because this amendment forbids it. Freedom of assembly was tested in the civil rights movement during the 1950s and 60s. City officials tried to stop marches and demonstrations by protesters who were fighting for equal rights for Black citizens. But the most notorious case happened in Columbia, South Carolina. It was March 1961. Nearly 215 Black citizens didn't listen to a police order to stop demonstrating for equal rights. The demonstration was held at the state capitol. They were arrested for disturbing the peace. 2 years later, the Supreme Court said the students were within their rights. The court has ruled that the state violated the freedom of speech right to serve as a soldier and the right to wage war on enemies. The Second Amendment states the right to have a state militia, which means states can be in there. So the government does not have the right to take away your arms. When the Bill of Rights was written, every legal fighting man was innocent in the number of his state's militia. The United States has a very small army. Our defense depended on each state's militia. If someone was doing a job in the military force with needed, the men would leave his job and join the military to help with the fighting. Today's state militias are not as important in our country. The state militia has a large military force which does that for us. The change from state military to a national defense means that it isn't necessary for each person to have the same arms. Nevertheless, the right to bear arms is important to the United States. Newspapers and magazines have news articles about other people should be able to shoot and their arms. Some arguments that having firearms in your home causes a lot of killing and increases on the number of crimes committed. Other arguments that it is necessary to keep in their arms to protect themselves. Both arguments have. The Supreme Court has not yet made a clear-cut ruling on what this amendment means. The debate is not about whether we can have guns. The debate is about what type of guns people should be able to own and how the guns should be licensed. Until the Supreme Court makes a clear-cut out ruling, this debate will not end. The Third Amendment of the United States of America says that no soldier, in time of peace, shall be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner. This law seems to be out of date, seeing how this is the 1900s, and that the armed forces have their own houses. In 1765, Green Bill convinced the Parliament passed two other laws, one of which made the colonists very angry. The reason the colonists got so mad because they thought some soldiers might have a horrible disease, and one of them might, family members might catch it and die. Another reason why they didn't like the law is because they thought one of the soldiers might steal something of theirs. The law and the citizens had to decide whether to force fuel, candles, metal, or beer, and British in the 13th colony. Many colonists thought the law was a tricky way of taking away their money. warrant from a judge. This amendment does not protect vehicles because in the past, when this amendment was written, they had not yet invented automobiles. The process of getting a search warrant includes presenting the case to a judge and explaining why you need the warrant. You also have to explain to the court what you expect to find. If the police do not get a warrant before they search, the evidence they may find can't be used against the accused person in a court of law. This means that at times, a guilty person may be let free. Our forefathers felt that it was better to let a criminal go free than to have the police snooping around for evidence. In the case of lockers, a debate has been going on about whether or not school lockers can be searched without a search warrant. Some people feel since the lockers are school property, the administration has the right to search them. Others feel that doing so would be violating the student's right of privacy. Search and seizure is a very important amendment. Without it, citizens of the United States would not have the privacy they deserve. Thank you.
The Sixth and Seventh Amendments protect the rights of the defendant in criminal court. It provides for trial by jury in civil cases. In simple words, it means an adult charged with a serious crime must be given a fair trial before a jury without delay. He must be told his charges and his cases must face him in court. He can force people to testify for him. He has the right to have a lawyer to defend him. The minute he wrote the Bill of Rights, remember that before the Revolution, British officials had great powers over the colonists. An American could be jailed without being told why. He could be kept for months and tried before a judge without a jury. The founders of our country were determined not to allow this to happen in their new government. There were often conflicts between the Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial and the First Amendment right of the press to report on a case. The courts tried to balance those rights without being unfair to the defendant or barring the press from the trial. We are glad we have these amendments to protect us from unfair judges or from unfair publicity against us if we were accused of a crime. The Supreme Court in 1963 also ruled that if we couldn't afford a lawyer, the state would pay for one for us. If this is a great country that really cares for the rights of its people.
The Fifth Amendment tells us we have the right to remain silent when arrested. The Fifth Amendment tells us we have the right to remain silent when arrested. We cannot be tried twice for the same crime. We must be treated fairly and justly.
She thought they just stole my husband's car. Say they do? Oh my God. Oh my God. I just love getting paid. You just get so much money. I love this job.
Many of the rights we take for granted are not spelled out in the Bill of Rights. Our forefathers had enough insight to add the Ninth Amendment, which states that the people have many rights that are not in the Constitution, that are not specifically stated in the Constitution. Many of these privileges include the rights to marry, date, stay out late without a government curfew, allowance, choose your own friends, and a right to an education. Without this amendment, we would not be able to pursue a chosen career. Part of the Ninth Amendment says we have the right to choose a job and pursue in happiness. If we were plugged into a government-chosen job, our right of happiness may be dampened. Often we take for granted the Ninth Amendment. So next time you enjoy a privilege from the Ninth Amendment, please use good judgment and remember the Ninth Amendment is one of the most important amendments. Being man to a slave to another, the 13th Amendment says no. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery and says that we, the people of the United States of America, all have equal rights. Throughout history, black people and other minorities have not been treated fairly or equally. The 13th Amendment states, and I quote, Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime wherein the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by the appropriate legislation. The 13th Amendment was ratified in 1865, after the Civil War ended. It not only guarantees freedom to black slaves on old southern plantations, it also guarantees freedom to all minorities, yesterday, today, and in the future. Slavery, according to the dictionary, means to lose your freedom and to be owned by another person. Before the Civil War, slaves didn't have any rights. They worked the whole day without getting paid. They often didn't get enough to eat or adequate shelter. Families were often split up and sold to different masters. These masters often treated them more like animals than human beings. Slaves were beaten and treated very badly. The 13th Amendment protects all people from this kind of treatment. The 13th Amendment, along with the 25 amendments, have made our country what it is today, a fair and just place to live, where all people are treated. The 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, was established in 1920. It took women 133 years to get the right to vote. Since the Constitution was signed in 1787 to the time 1920, when the amendment was written and put into action. In 1848, the first women's rights convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York. About 300 people attended the meeting.
Corita Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were big speakers for women's rights at this meeting. The black leader, Frederick Douglass, spoke out for women's right to vote. It wasn't until the 1850s women actually started fighting for the right to vote. The Constitution didn't actually say women couldn't vote, so this left the question of who had the right to vote. At first, only white men who owned property had the right to vote. Susan B. Anthony played a big part in women's right to vote. Susan helped found the National Women's Suffrage Association. Then in 1872, Susan was arrested for trying to vote. Since the Supreme Court ruled against women's right to vote, the women decided to work state by state to get each state approved women's rights. Wyoming, which was not a state, was the first territory to give the women the right to vote. Virginia Minor went to the Supreme Court after trying to register to vote, and the men wouldn't let her. In World War I helped women win the right to vote because of the great help with the war effort. By the time the war was over, one half of the states let women have the right to vote. Over the years, women worked for equal rights in all areas. In 1972, Congress passed the Equal Rights Amendment. 38 states had to approve the amendment for it to pass. Only 35 states approved the amendment, so it didn't pass. There are many reasons it didn't pass. Some people felt women had already equal rights. Others worried what changes more rights might bring. Nowadays, we have women governors. Also, these days, women sometimes get paid less for the same jobs as men. Some of the things we would like to see in the future are equal rights for women, women getting better jobs, men staying home with the kids, more women standing up for the rights, and more women in Congress and higher-ranking jobs. 200 years ago, when John Adams was writing the Declaration of Independence, he received a letter from his wife, Abigail. The letter read, "Remember the ladies, or we will not hold ourselves bound in any laws which we have no voice. Remember, women have rights too."